It was the most perfect moon mission ever, right? Well, that depends on your definition of perfect. Things did suck during Apollo 8, just wasn't broadcast worthy, and of course there were many space firsts as well, like the precedent of space travel uncertainties. Yes, the astronaut wives become a part of this story. Well, this is what we are exploring on the next Vintage Retrospect. So last year I did a video on a lot of the Apollo missions that went to the moon, and at least one problem occurred. So let's start with Apollo 8 and the first manned moon mission. Apollo 8 may have brought mankind to the moon and back safely without any major problems. But to be fair, the mission was gut-wrenching, tested systems to their absolute max, and also made every person involved in the mission frightened for a potential loss of crew. Let's start with the fact that the Apollo 8 lifted off perfectly. Well, that's boring. Until this first space happens. Apollo 8 Commander Frank Borman got really sick. He had diarrhea and he vomited as well. NASA had no real plans to deal with such an issue. However, because of that, Borman didn't want anyone to know about the incident. Researchers now believe that he was suffering from what is called space adaptation syndrome. This technically affects about 1/3 of all astronauts during the initial days in space, but modern day medicine pretty much makes that point moot. So the mission was really fun for everyone, right? Fun fact, everything that was tried in this mission was also a life-threatening situation. These issues were raised by astronauts' wives, NASA Mission Control, and the crew of Apollo 8 themselves. In order to get to the moon, the craft has to initiate an engine burn called the trans-lunar injection. This burn is responsible for the spacecraft to break Earth's gravity and head on a looped trajectory to the moon. Yes, I said looped trajectory, and I have a video right up here explaining the whole purpose of that figure 8 trajectory. But why is this burn so life-threatening? Well, if it's done wrong, such as overburning, the crew can overshoot the moon, escape Earth's sphere of influence, and orbit the sun. Sunny vacations are cool and all, but not that one. Next came up the approach to the moon. And the next worry Mission Control had was, will the surface propulsion engine fire to retrograde to capture the lunar orbit? I'm sure these were not actual mission problems, but the flight computer is going to be the main contributor here. And damn, this thing would make the crew crap its pants on the daily. Mentions of program alarm codes that yielded cabin heat fluctuations and fuel usage mismatches were just to name a few problems. Even trivial alarms like the program code 401 kept popping up, indicating a locked gimbal. Even having these errors pop up while you're far away in space is gut-wrenching. The computer restarted often to reset these error codes, regardless of accuracy. Apollo 8 was the first mission to really test the computer, and the most challenging part of the mission was the flight computer itself. For those that are going to scream in the comments that the Apollo 7 was the first crewed mission to use the flight computer, we need to understand its only operating scope was that it was in low Earth orbit and not going all the way to the moon. After we get past the moonrise photo and the live broadcast of the infamous Christmas Day Bible reading, we wrap the mission up with another astronaut threat. The engine burn required to break off the moon and head back to Earth, and it was also an astronaut wife worry of the century. If you've watched From the Earth to the Moon, this mini-series tells the story really well. If this engine fails to light, the crew now has to request a permanent change of address, the moon. It was painstakingly iterated that the SPS engine didn't require an ignition source, so it just needed 2 fuels to mix and touch each other to create the combustion needed to fire the engine. Really, the only failure point here was the valves. And finally, we get to the heat shield. It just had to work. And I won't be going into this much, as Artemis II has already told the story in modern form, so I'd expect even the most general audience to understand its importance. Well, that's a great start for this Apollo Problem series, and if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing so you never miss the next Apollo mission and its problems. Again, I'm your host Chad, and I will see you out on the launch pad.